We're continuing with That Evening's Sun by Faulkner. Remember that we have a narrator here, and the narrator early in the story, I think, mentions 15 years ago, and gradually we will see, suddenly toward the end we will see who this narrator is, and we can even calculate approximately how old the narrator is, but 15 years ago. Changes and all that. Sometimes then, so the last thing I mentioned was that we have, at the heart of this story, I'll get to the point, at the heart of this story lies a contrast between two families. It took me a long time to realize this, but this is very interesting. What Faulkner has done here is very interesting. Compared with the previous two stories, it's still a good one. It's still very, very good. Okay. The White family. Father, mother, and 3 children. Now, the father is an intelligent man, but I think he's kind of impatient, or what? He's like Mr. Bennet in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. He feels that he is surrounded by, let's say, imbeciles. Obviously, the marriage is not a good one. The wife, mother, stays in bed all the time, though she is not really sick. She whines, we would say, and complains about a lack of attention from her husband. It's clear that she claims to be sick in order to try to get some attention from him. He's kind of a cold man, actually. Now, he's not presented this way. The narrator presents him a little sympathetically, but we have to look, I think. And he's kind of a cold man, very intelligent, obviously, is a kind man, really. He wants to be kind to Nancy, and I think he is not very racist. In fact, I think maybe he is more tolerant toward the black people in the story than he is toward his own family, especially his wife. The word for her is valetudinarian, but really these are psychosomatic symptoms that she has, to use somewhat technical language, I guess. Valetudinarian, sick all the time. Psychosomatic, these are not real bodily illnesses, these are generated from the mind. Okay, 3 children. The oldest is the boy, as I recall, Quentin, I think. And then there's Candace, and then there's little Jason. Now, let's get to the point. A lot of this story, an alarming percentage of the lines of this story consists of lines like this, of the children squabbling. And the squabbling is terrible. I mean, it's stupid. I ain't no nigger. Are you a nigger? It's not that low. I mean, nigger at that time, educated people used the word in the South. The point is the squabbling. I can't give you examples. It's my turn. No, it's my turn. Nancy should help me. She shouldn't help you. I can't think of other things, but I think you generally get the point. Now, why, the reader, the intelligent reader, I think, has to ask, why does Faulkner put so much of such low material into his story? And that's the key question which leads to this interpretation of the story. The reason why is that he's contrasting these two families. The White family, which on the surface is so respectable, lawyer, prosperous, nice house, family, 3 children, so the marriage produced children. It was not barren, but a fruitful marriage. But look at this family. Look at that husband and wife. Look at that marriage. There is no love. There's no feeling. There is not much respect even. But let's leave that out. The main element here is feeling, passion, totally lacking in the white marriage. And the children are really being brought up badly. The father simply ignores the stupid things that they say rather than correct the children. The mother, too consumed in her own self-pity to take much trouble with the children. Oh, they'll grow up well, they'll do well in school, they'll get university degrees, and that's kind of the point. So respectable, but empty. Empty and unlikable, intolerable almost. Now the black family, everything about the blacks has to be put in quotations. First of all, Nancy and Jesus are not legally married. Theirs is a common law marriage. Second, it's what else? They're poor. He's violent. He's a criminal. She's a prostitute. She's a prostitute part of the time. But we get some insight into electric passion. It's electricity between them. And that's key to an interpretation of the ending of the story too. Because I'll give you some examples. Here she is a prostitute, and he's on the move all the time, probably avoiding the law. At one point, Jesus, has disappeared, gone somewhere far away. And Mr. whatever their name is, I don't remember, the white guy, the lawyer. The lawyer says to Nancy, who's doing the laundry and sometimes filling in as maid, as housemaid there, oh, he's probably in St. Louis and he's with some other woman there. And Nancy, who has seemed to be so submissive, whose life is kind of brutal. We saw that with the deacon kicking her teeth. White men who take advantage of her sexually and don't pay. Who's going to make the white man pay? Who is going to make that white man pay Nancy for her sexual services? Her life is the one of, like Alice Walker says much later, a black author who was very famous 20 or 30 years ago. The black woman is the mule of the world, kicked, used, bearing terrible burdens, raising children when black men disappear, not entirely the black man's fault, white man's fault really. That's Nancy. But when lawyer says that, suddenly she says, he wouldn't dare, because he knows I would find him and I would take a razor and slice his throat, and I'd slice her up into many little pieces. I'm paraphrasing really. I don't remember what she says, but it is powerful. The passion that unites those two people is powerful. And that's the contrast. Do they have any children? No. Are they respectable in any way? No. But electricity between them. And that's the point. Now, early in the story we realize that Nancy's pregnant. And she's certainly not pregnant by Jesus. We begin to think that in this powerfully passionate relationship, it's kind of like Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. Someone's sterile, and it's not Nancy. She's pregnant now. Jesus must be sterile in some sense. And she's pregnant, probably by the white customer. He's furious. And Jesus is. And Jesus starts to spend time at the lawyer's house, but the lawyer decides, no, he may not come in my house. He's a scary guy. So, as Jesus says in one of his few lines in the story, white man can come to my house, but I can't come to white man's kitchen or spend any time in white man's house. He's angry. He's angry at the whole world, especially at white men. But what can he do? What can he do? What could a black man do anyway? Angry. and Nancy openly mocks him. Whoa, that's true too. I'd forgotten that. He makes a comment about a watermelon from the vine. The watermelon is her pregnancy. That watermelon didn't come from your vine. She taunts him. So, wow. Anyway, gradually as the story goes along, it becomes clear that Jesus has come back. He traveled for a while, has come back, and she is sure that he wants to kill her, that he will kill her. And then we get this powerful series of scenes when she begs the family to let her stay there. But they say no. The father says no. Mother definitely says no. Mother doesn't like having her around. Probably sexually jealous. Probably she thinks that the father will have something with her. I don't think there's much danger of that. But the father is a decent man, sort of. And he says, okay, I will walk you back home. I'll even walk you back home. And he even lets the children stay there at Nancy's little shack out or near the woods. But how long can the children stay? And can you force the children to stay? So Nancy, desperate, tries to tell the children interesting little stories, tries to fix the children some popcorn in her poverty-ridden home. But pretty soon the children get bored because these are spoiled little children, the white children. That's the word for them, spoiled. And pretty soon they're whining. I want to go home. I want to go home and have some fun. This is no fun. This is boring. And pretty soon, Father has to come and get them, and Nancy is left alone in that house. Oh, when they arrived that last time with the children and Father, they find the hoof of some animal. I forget what, a cow, a horse, a pig, maybe, leg, just lying there on the table. Well, somebody had to have put it there, and it wasn't Nancy. And whoever put it there did not have kind intentions. But that's beyond the point. Without thinking reasonably like this, there is no question in Nancy's mind, Jesus put it there, and he's out there, and he's going to kill her. Now, the reader has a question. That hoof is true, is quite a powerful argument, but lawyer thinks no, he's not out there. He's in Memphis by now. He's in St. Louis. He's far away. But Nancy knows. And the point for the reader is, on Nancy's level of knowledge, there is such electricity between between Jesus and her, that she knows everything about him. And if she says he's out there, he's there. And it really doesn't matter what anybody else says, because on that level of intuitive knowledge, that's certainty. That's more certain than anything in the world. It's like religious knowledge. It's like mystical knowledge. It's more certain than anything in the world. Nothing in the world is more certain than that intuitive knowledge, because everything else could be wrong. That can't be wrong. And that's what Faulkner does in the story, and it's excellent. So at the very end of the story, the children are leaving, whining, squabbling, and Nancy sits in that house, moaning. And that moaning is described by the author, not music, but not just moaning either. Something so powerful, it's on the level of black gospel music at some of its best, or if it's not the music, it's certain brilliant black gospel singers, some of whom have converted this to secular music, and it's power. It is power. And we know how it sounds without even hearing it. She leaves the door open. She's not going to make any attempt she basically she's facing her death. She's facing a certain death, and a violent death, and she accepts it completely. Power. Now, our hint, and here the whole story, I think, in a sense depends on this. Okay, there are two things in the story: the contrast between the two families and the narrator. And as the children and father are leaving the house and walking along, Quentin, who is the oldest, says, "Father, who's going to do our laundry now?" Wow. Now, readers have to have their feelings and their imaginations open when they read, or they will miss everything. That line, in a sense, is the most powerful line in the whole story. Because when the writer, the author, puts that line in there, add 15 years to that, from that point of view. Let's say he's 10 years old. Now he was 10 years old. Add 15, now he's 25. How does he feel when he remembers that he said that line? Humiliated, stung, ashamed. Anyone would. I think, and perhaps, as stupid as we are, on that level, we know to be ashamed. Especially since we can be quite sure the woman was murdered. The woman was murdered, and what was Quentin concerned about? Father, who's going to do our laundry now? He's ashamed. And that's what produced the story. That sense of shame. Power. I think, really, it is a great story. And notice how sympathetic it is to the black people. But it doesn't sentimentalize the black people either. It's very objective. Faulkner writes this with open eyes. Sympathy for the black people. Sympathy, a lot of sympathy. And really contempt for the white. But sentimentality, not much. Open eyes. Great story. Now, moving on, we're going to tell one other story today. I know we can't do two, and that's okay. I think I'll tell for Esme because it's very moving. Maybe I'll stay away from that. Chrysanthemums. Steinbeck. Chrysanthemum is a flower. Okay. Like most of Steinbeck, it's situated in California in the Salinas Valley. I've never been there, but he made it famous. Agricultural farm. At the beginning of the story, we see a farm out in the country. Everything's well ordered, and we see a woman dressed in men's clothing with overalls and a hat to protect the skin, no doubt. But all of this makes her seem kind of manlike and conceals her femininity. She's working in her garden, and she's working on her chrysanthemums. Eliza Allen is her name. Her husband's name is Henry. She is working at that, taking care of those flowers, and she works with powerful hands, and she digs, and she gets rid of bugs or any infestation, I guess, with certainty and authority. Once again, dressed as a male. Okay. Now, we learn that they have no children, and this will open your eyes because we just did a story in which there were no children, but there Faulkner was doing something else. Generally in literature, when a family has no children, that means sexual incompatibility. That means something's wrong. Something's wrong with that marriage. It's not fair, but that's what it is. And it's certainly the case here. Okay. Henry is down the road a little bit, leaning on a fence, talking with a couple of men. They are buyers for his cows, I guess. Cows. The men leave, they shake hands and leave, and Henry approaches Eliza. Boy, you're working hard on those flowers. Yes, and you're very good at it. The garden looks wonderful. You are the mistress of that art. Yes, I am. I know it, and I feel my mastery. Then he says, sold some cattle. Let's go out tonight. Let's go downtown to a restaurant and celebrate. sold some cattle and almost got my price. Keyword, almost. And she says, that's nice, dear, that's nice. But what she's really saying is, if I had been there, I would have gotten the price. And that's their marriage. She's a very frustrated person. And in her frustration, she emasculates him. Whose fault? You can't say. But the fact is that he is emasculated. Look it up. His manliness is so impaired by the relationship with her. On the other hand, she is frustrated too. The result is certainly sexual incompatibility. And we get a hint of this when we learn that they sleep in separate bedrooms too. So there's no guessing here, it's all obvious. Separate bedrooms, childlessness, and her somewhat very aggressive attitude. But her aggression is based on, the source of her aggression, of course, is frustration. Sexual frustration, maybe. I imagine what happened is they found themselves married. A small problem happened at the beginning, which is not so, is fairly normal, I bet, between people who have to get used to each other. And how people adjust to that problem is the key. The key. I'll discuss this for a second. He must have patience. Both people must have patience. And if they don't, they might never recover. Okay. So, then Henry goes to do some more, goes to do some more work, and she continues working in her garden, aggressively, because she has basically shifted some of her sexual aggression to the attention of the chrysanthemums. And we learn that chrysanthemums take 9 months in their kind of gestation period. 9 months, just like a human pregnancy. So the children, her children, so to speak, are those chrysanthemums. And she guards them, and they are her life in a sense. He has gone down the road to work. Along down the highway, and coming off the highway, comes a truck. It's not a truck because it's a wagon. It's drawn by a mule and a horse. A symbol, as some insightful student showed me a long time ago, it's kind of like the 14 instances of old in Miss Brill I told you about. The mule and the horse can never be fertile together. They can't reproduce. Mule and a horse. Interesting. And the wagon pulls up to, and on the side of the wagon is, I fix everything. Fix it. Fix your pots and pans, fix your knives, fix your tools. I can fix everything. And the words are written by clearly a man who is not educated at all. So the wagon pulls up. Eliza is still working. Nice farm you've got here. She's not interested. Her defenses are up, as most of ours are in situations like that. We're defending ourselves before the man begins his pitch, as we say. I travel up and down this road, the main highway, all year long. I follow the nice weather. When it's very warm weather, I go north. When winter comes, I come south. I left the highway this time to see something new, and I've come down to your farm. Got anything I can fix? Nope, don't have anything. Pause. I'm hungry. I haven't had any work. I've got to find some work here. Defense. And then he says, "What are you? Those are beautiful flowers you're fixing there." She starts to warm, like a person praising a person's children. Most parents will warm up. By now he's gotten off the wagon. Yes, and she starts to explain, and you've got to be strong with these things. You've got to be firm. You've got to know what you're doing. warming up, warming up. And the key line, in my opinion, the key line in the whole story comes when he says suddenly, they look like a quick puff of colored smoke. A quick puff of colored smoke. Wow. Could Henry ever, in his whole life, have said a thing like that? Inconceivable. Henry is a down-to-earth farmer, a pedestrian soul, incapable of poetry of any kind. If he was ever capable of it, for sure in this marriage he's not, because he's got to watch what he says. He's got to be careful, and a person cannot guard his words and utter poetic things like that. But this man who leads this romantic life up and down the highway, following freedom, he's a gypsy, really. He didn't even try. The words just came out of him, spontaneously. A quick puff of colored smoke. Wow. Her heart softens immediately. I think he doesn't even know the effect that his words had. He didn't even know that he had said something remarkable. He's a romantic. He's the real thing. But he's hungry too. She changes. And she takes off her hat. Sure sign that she's allowing her femininity to emerge. And she shakes her hair, her beautiful hair probably. Down comes her hair. And she starts to ask him more about his life. And he, following the nice weather, freedom, romantic. All romantic stuff. Freedom, spontaneity, close to nature. But he says at one point, sometimes when I'm lying out there under the stars, I feel, what he really says is he feels lonely and a longing that's not just sexual. And she says, yes, I know. And you lie there and you open yourself to the stars, and the stars prick you. It's like the stars stab you, little stabs. This is Eliza lying alone in her bed, in her solitary bedroom, longing, having the same longings, physical but not just physical, as the man has. Wow, power, amazing. And as she speaks, she actually reaches out and almost touches his pant leg. Her chest is heaving. She is excited. For him specifically, no. This is more solipsism, actually. Oh, and I neglected that in the previous one. Solipsism and self-deceit, self-deception. I'll come back. Solipsism here for sure. And I must discuss solipsism more, and I have time today. And as she's almost sexually excited, and he is standing there, and he understands, but he has to say, it's nice, but not when you haven't had any food, not when you've got nothing to eat. Probably says, not when you ain't got nothing to eat, because that's how he is. And after all, he is hungry. Now, imagine what would happen in a modern short storyteller would say in this sexually charged situation. But Steinbeck wrote this in about 1945 to 1950, 50 years ago. Okay, she then is immediately sobered. She feels embarrassed, and she says, "I think I've got a pot and pan, a pan, and some scissors for you to work on here." And she goes and fetches them and brings them to him. They continue to speak, but in a somewhat desultory and perfunctory way. That is, nothing happening here. He finishes the job. Oh, and he continues to praise the flowers, though. And he even says, "I've got a customer down the road," that means hundreds of miles away maybe, "who would be very interested in those flowers." "Oh, really? That's wonderful," she says. "I think I will pack one into a pot, and you can take it to her." "Thank you, that'd be nice." So she runs, gets a pot, puts the flower into the pot, packs it carefully, says, now remember, you've got to remember, gives some instructions, right? And gives it to him. And then he's gone. She finishes her work. Then she goes in to shower or to bathe. And when she bathes, she uses pumice, which is a harsh, it's like sandpaper. And she scrubs herself. Guilt. Sexual guilt. She knows what happened and what could have happened. In fact, I didn't say, but virtually she offers herself to him. She would like to go with him and lead that life with him. And that's when he says, except if you ain't got nothing to eat or something like that. She feels sexually guilty and sullied. And when she comes out of the shower, then she stands in front of the mirror and she examines her body. And basically she wants to know if she is still sexually attractive, if she is still an attractive woman. She's 35 or so now. So there's nothing hidden about the themes here. Then she gets dressed, sits on the front porch. Henry comes up. They talk, but oh God, conversation impossible. He asks her questions. Boy, you look nice. And she immediately, what do you mean nice? What do you mean nice? She's trying to force him to say something more inspired. But her forcing, of course, chills him. It paralyzes him. Just like in their sexual relationship, one can be sure. And he is rendered impotent, that's the word. And anyone can see this, and you middle school students can imagine this too. Because it's the same, not just sexually, but in any confrontation with two people. The one person is, what? What do you mean? Irritable, forceful. How can the other person possibly be warm and spontaneous and open and natural? It's impossible. Okay, what do you mean? And strong, you look strong. What do you mean? And he breaks and he says, you look so strong that you could take a melon and crack the melon like a calf over your leg. Whoa! Brutal, harsh, down-home farm, realistic language. She asked for it. But the poor woman too. The poor two people caught in this relationship that solipsism. Do they share a world? No. Do they share anything? No. Each is caught in his own world. Why? Because people are that way. Because I think the author implies it's almost impossible for two people to communicate. The story implies that. The story implies that marriage is impossible, actually. That's an overstatement, but not by much. Not by much. Anyway, so she's disgusted by that, and he says, I'm going to go in and shower, and then we'll go to dinner. So he showers, he comes out, they're driving down the highway. First thing she finds, she sees a speck on the road. She knows what it is. It's the flower, the chrysanthemum. Was he interested in the chrysanthemum? No. But he'll keep the pot. At least he kept the pot, she thinks. She knew. Then, after that, they pass the wagon itself, but she doesn't look. And they go to dinner. Oh, then they're on their way. And she says, maybe we can see a movie afterward. Maybe we'll have some wine with dinner and see a movie. There's hope here for their romance. Oh, no, not movie. See a boxing match. Yes. I've looked at the pictures in the magazines, and I see the blood. What she's looking at is the blood spattered on hairy masculine chests, these masculine muscular bodies of the boxers, and this excites her a little bit. And he's amused by this, and this is nice. Okay, we'll do it if you like. That's nice that you're interested. But then she starts to think, and she thinks, no, that'd be a little too much. But maybe a glass of wine at dinner. She's a timid woman. She's caught in this life. She's caught in her personality. And at the end of the story, she weeps like a woman. But I think the story. I wonder what Steinbeck means by that ending, because it puts too much of the guilt on her, in my opinion. The story, that ending implies that the problem here is that she won't let herself be a woman. That she guards her feelings, she protects herself, and in doing so, she emasculates him. That puts too much of the blame on her, in my opinion. Both people are to blame in a situation like this. And who knows if they can ever get out of this. I think the Steinbeck also implies a little wine, and maybe these two people can break out of their shells and reach each other in some physical or emotional merging, growing together. But that's overly optimistic, I think. I don't think so. The story implies that it's because of her coldness that things don't work very well. Oh, I forgot to say, when she was pushing him on the porch there, at a certain point, he looked down the road to the barn, and a great line. Steinbeck, genius, and a couple of times in this story. And when he brought his eyes back, they were his own again. What was he doing? He was calming his emotion, regaining his self-control, his self-mastery, regaining control of his emotions. And when he brought his eyes back, they were his own again. That's a stroke of genius. And Steinbeck is capable of that. I haven't read that much of him, but Of Mice and Men is a work, I think, of kind of genius too. This story can stand with many of them, but just barely, I think. Solipsism. It has been said by some people, I haven't read them, but I know they've said it, that solipsism dominates modern literature, modern art even. Take an abstract piece of modern art. What does it represent? It represents the feelings of that painter. But that painter is not really communicating those feelings to us. We simply see them. That painting is solipsistic. It implies that the artist, is caught in his own world, and it implies that each of us is caught in his or her own world too. We can kind of get a feeling of what's going on in that artist's mind, but only kind of. Solipsistic. Modern literature, and that means for the past 100 years, has been dominated. I believe this. I don't know enough about it really to speak with authority on this, because as you can see, I've spent a lot of time dealing with the past, that is, ancient and medieval and Renaissance and all that. So I am not well versed in modern literature, but I can well believe it's solipsistic. Maybe our culture is solipsistic. A PC bong is a monument to solipsism. Computer culture is a monument to solipsism. Even when we are chatting with others, we are there with that computer. Ourselves and the computer. There may be another person somewhere out there with whom we are kind of communicating. Television watching, movie watching, these are solipsistic exercises. Especially TV. I'm alone with that TV. And if other people are watching with me and laughing with me, I break out of it a little, but mostly it's the TV and I. And that means I. Solipsistic. The more crowded the world becomes, the more gadget-oriented, that is, computers, etc., DVDs, whatever you want. Earphones. Oh, the Walkman is a perfect example. The Walkman is a symbol of modern culture too. The machine and I, or in other words, I. Alone, isolated, cut off from other people. Not very interested really in other people. Want to hear those tunes. Want to watch those films. Want to cruise the internet or surf the net or whatever we say. Solipsism. It's everywhere. Koreans are very social people, but this solipsism has become, because you love your gadgets, a very real thing in Korean society too, I suspect. See what you think. The love of the gadgets means solipsism. Even though you're very social people, I think you are becoming very solipsistic too. Maybe even more than Americans. That's an interesting thought too. Anyway, solipsism and self-deception. I guess I can't pursue them now, but good enough. Thank you.